welcome everyone. My name is Daria, and I'm founder and CEO of VAR Studio. I started this company 7 years ago with a big joy, passion for AR and VR technologies. And at that moment, I understood, okay, I can do anything in my life. But what I really love is virtual and augmented reality. And I decided to do something with that. And I was also passionate for business. So I combined these two passions, the first for technologies, the second for business processes. And this is how we came up with this whole concept using the AR, VR technologies for business challenges, objectives, needs, and so on and so forth. So this is what we do. And today we have a webinar on the very spicy topic, the corporate metaverse and the role of VR, AR technologies in this whole concept. And here with me is Steve and Bobby, our guests, with the wonderful background. Steve is VP of Product at Mana Interactive. And before that, he was the Chief of Product at American Express, right, Steve?
Director of Product, yeah.
Director of Product at
American Express for the past 6 years. Yep.
Yeah, and the digital experience as well, right? It was like the combination of those.
Exactly. We're working across all of the digital channels, the web, mobile, their email channels, everything kind of digital.
Cool. That sounds great. And Bobby, he's XR VR content and business development manager at the FS Studio, XR pitch advisor at South to Southwest, and the writer at VRScout. Guys, you have an incredible background and I love it. And I would love to give you like a few minutes so you can do yourself an intro for our guests and then we can go forward.
Sure, Stephen, you want to go first or what do you think?
Sure, I could go first. Yeah, thank you. So like Daria said, I'm Steve Mautone, VP of Product for Mana Interactive. Mana Interactive is a debit card targeting the gamer community. So we provide rewards points and all of the different features that gamers would want to see in their bank account. Before that, I worked for American Express, like Daria said, as the director of product for the digital department, digital experience, working across web, mobile, email, SMS, push notifications, everything digital. But really, my whole life, I've been super excited in technology. So I've kind of always been looking at the cutting edge, newest technology. That's kind of drawn me to AR technology, Google Glasses, like I was an explorer back in the day, and trying out all of the new AR and VR devices. What I'm most proud of right now is that recently been able to kind of cross those two passions, and Mana Interactive was able to work with your company to build out the first VR banking app. So was able to kind of cross my two passions to build this new product and really excited about.
Oh, hi. How am I excited about that? Like we are super proud to develop the first ever banking service in virtual reality and pushing that to the metaverse concept and dimension. That is just amazing. And thank you for that opportunity. Happy to have you here. Thanks. Bobby,
Absolutely.
Please go on.
Sure. So I'm Bobby Carlton, and as Daria mentioned, I am the XR VR content manager here at FS Studio. In FS Studio, we are a XR software solutions company. We do a lot of work in enterprise, robotics, warehouse automation, really focusing on Industry 4. However, we do have this amazing creative art team and UX team, so we do other projects outside of that type of industry. On top of that, as Daria mentioned, I am on the South by Southwest XR Pitch Advisory Board. I am a writer for VRScout, and to sort of connect all the dots, I actually wrote a piece on Mana when they launched their banking app. So I was very familiar with that, and I was very excited to see Stephen on this. Before that,
awesome.
I had spent many years. I was actually working in the XR industry. I was I was director of a project called VR Learn. That was back in 2016. And that was through a technology think tank called the Maisie Center. And what we did was we really focused on what does XR technology, at the time it was VR technology, we won't say XR, but at the time it was just VR technology, but how does VR technology play a role in education, corporate learning? How do we transform enterprise through this type of technology in everything from onboarding to recruitment to processes and procedures? And through that program, I was very lucky. I worked with a lot of different organizations, from Purina to Bank of America, Siemens Technology, and whatnot. And over the years, I've really, I was a consultant for a long time before actually joining FS Studio. And that's basically me in a nutshell. That's been really the scope of my work, has been how does XR, VR, AR, how does that all play a role in the way we work and engage with each other in a workforce.
Absolutely. I love it. I love the consultancy part in what we do. And I feel you're passionate about that, and I can relate to it. Well, thank you. I'm happy to have you here, guys. And you have this impressive background. And I have this icebreaker question. How would you describe to 5 years old you what you're doing right now? Like, what is your profession?
Oh, wow.
It's such a difficult question. I think, Bobby, you should go first on that one.
Well, okay, I see what you're doing. All right. Well, if I were to go to 5-year-old me and explain to myself, like, hey, this is what I'm doing now, today in the future, I would tell them that I'm using, again, this is how I would put it, like special effects of video game type of content to change the way that we work, and to make the workforce more engaging, and to provide you with more details and more information, so that that 5-year-old me, knows, like, hey, like we can almost predict the future through this type of video game technology, and we can almost predict what could happen, and we can predict what can happen if we were to change things. And I'm sure 5-year-old me would be like, what are you talking about? Like, but that's how I would explain it, that 5-year-old me, I would relate it in that way, that we use this sort of like, video game type of process.
Yeah.
I like that you framed it that way. I like that you focus on special effects in video games, because I think that's something that 5-year-old version of us would probably understand. But it's such a complex question, because if you think back, like I was originally going to answer it by saying, like, to a 5-year-old, I usually say I build mobile apps, because every 5-year-old today knows what that means. They know what the squares on their parents' phones are. But 5-year-old me had no idea what a mobile app was, because they didn't exist then, right? So it's a complicated question. 5-year-olds today are very different than 5-year-olds that many years ago.
Yeah, but I love this reference to the video games. This is something we could understand in that time, and something you can create this connection between what we do and what was at that period of time. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the idea of gamification, right? I mean, here's the thing. I feel like gamification is a beat up term. And I feel like gamification is one of those things that kind of has this negative connotation, only because when we go to those like work conferences, those traditional work conferences, like gamification is like the human knot. I don't know if you guys ever done the human knot, but it's like this, when they tie up 5 or 6 people, you lean backwards and no one falls and stuff like that. So the gamification today through XR technology really changes the idea of like, oh, you're actually involving like a gaming type of experience into learning. So I think it's safe to bring gamification back into that language, but it has a totally different meaning.
Yeah,
It's true. Gamification usually goes to like game theory, right? Usually how you get people to make decisions.
Yeah.
But you can actually turn it into an actual video game, because technology has caught up that way. So, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, it is. And our guests, I invite you to share, how would you explain you were 5 years old yourself, what you do at the moment. So please share in chat. It will be interesting to out what type of professions do we have in here. Because before this webinar, we were going through the list of people who registered, and we found out that we even have a librarian who registered for this webinar, and that was quite a revelation because we didn't expect that, like the librarian who's interested in corporate metaverse. That is just impressive. So
yeah, I mean, and I think that just shows you sort of, you know, where we are today. We are just so heavily digitally connected, and we're digitally connected in ways that we never even really imagined. I mean, we have smart refrigerators, you know, that, you know, to tell us that the milk, you know, that you're either out of milk or the milk went bad, or, and, you know, so the idea that a librarian, and there's, you know, or someone at a barista at a coffee shop, I mean, that this idea of corporate world enterprise solutions, and that's a lot of different industries, that this technology absolutely plays a role, and how that fits in, right? It's not a perfect fit at times, and then there are times it's a great fit, and then there are times where it's like it's not a fit at all, and it just sort of, you need to figure out, like, I'm sure, Stephen, you probably have seen that in
the
your
approach.
past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what I would say is that I think we've seen a lot of these XR and AR companies talk about moving towards corporate America because there's more, or there are very direct use cases that they can start building upon, and there's funding to do very robust projects, because to enhance a business process with XR, you would need to rebuild the entire business process, right? So it's not going to be just building an app on the side of the business process. It's actually changing the whole way that it works. So I feel like because these companies dove into the corporate space kind of first, it's opened up a lot of interest and excitement about, well, what are they doing? Whereas Google Glass been for the past decade, because it's now in the enterprise space, and it has to have done something in 10 years, right? So I hope that people are starting to get excited about what it is that's been happening in the enterprise and corporate community.
Absolutely. Now it's
Totally,
for Google.
totally. And you bring up a really good point. And one thing, sorry, Daria.
Oh, sorry. I think I have some
Sorry.
issues with internet connection. Can you hear me well?
There's a little delay.
Yeah, I can.
We can hear you now. Yeah,
we can hear you now. But
Okay.
I was gonna kind of build off what you were saying, Stephen, like about how, you know, the idea, like all this technology, and we see how it works, right? We're seeing data, we're talking ROI and KPIs, and we see how they're so robust. But at the same time, we need to think about how technology is also a disruptor, right? You need to think about when you're introducing a new process in training or a new process in the workflow, that there's going to be some disruption. And at times it could even be some alienation. You can alienate your employees by saying, hey, we are moving into this XR solution. And you're going to have those, you know, legacy employees who are like, I've been here for 30 years and we've never done this way, and I don't see why I need to change. Or we've seen this type of success over the years. And so the idea is, it's like, yes, you can bring it into your corporate environment. Yes, you can bring it into your for automation, but there needs to be that sort of like cadence of like, how do we do this in a way with the least amount of disruption, with the least amount of alienation? And you have to also consider, if it's new into your environment, that yes, there's going to be a bit of a slowdown. So what's the strategy behind that? You know, how do you do that? And so that's going to come from like either really great UX design, in my opinion, and also a really great, you know, having a subject matter expert available to you to help you walk through that process.
Yeah, there are so
Absolutely.
many nuances on that, and I can relate to what you're saying. We are in discussion with the big manufacturing company, and they want to integrate AR in the smart glasses for their engineers to train themselves and so on and so forth. But they've been working there for 10, 20, 30 years, and they just don't want to feel stupid in those glasses because they don't understand what the heck, like, why do we need to use that? How are we going to use that? It's just stupid. I don't want to. So we were discussing that we can launch the first version on the tablets, for example, because they are already familiar with this technology, and that will help them integrate it into their workflow. And after that, when they understand the value of AR technology in the training process, then we can switch and upgrade it to the glasses. So there are a lot of different approaches on how you can help that disruption go more smoothly and not that stressful for people. But yeah, listen, we have this topic like the corporate metaverse, right? And it's super complicated, and there are so many names and understanding of this concept in general. So let's start with, how do you define the metaverse for yourself, just so we can agree on the general meaning in here. And after that, we can go. We have very interesting questions from our audience as well, so we can move with that as well. So,
Awesome.
Steve, would you like to start?
I could jump in. Yeah, like I love to try to define the metaverse, because it seems as though it's one of those things that's almost impossible to define, and that's why it's so great. And I think that's why it gets so much not controversy, but memes and whatnot on the internet, because the metaverse could be like floating avatars with no legs, or it could be video games that we've been playing for several decades. I liked what Bobby said earlier, though, where he's talking about Internet of Things and talking about augmented reality as also being including real life physical sensors that are actually testing or checking for things that are happening in the physical world and potentially showing us a digital version of it. So I like to look at the metaverse as the combination between the physical and digital world. It has a lot to do with spatial computing, because we can start to show things in the world, the same world. They go next to each other. But as I was thinking about the answer to this question, and I was thinking of, like, some people believe that the Matrix is the metaverse. But what I would like to say is that Zion is also the metaverse, because of all the robots and all the sensors and all of the other stuff that was happening there. Like, the whole world was controlled by the robots. And that's where we're going. So, my transition.
That sounds amazing.
And well.
We're building this future that we see in Hollywood doesn't usually end well, but we're still building it, and it's still growing, and it's still going that way.
And we still have some fun.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, for me, the metaverse is interesting, right? Because there, in my opinion, I feel like again, what's been happening with the language of what is the metaverse, and you're right, Stephen. I think it's such a random definition, and it really depends on what industry you're coming from. Is what does the metaverse mean to you? You know, whether you're gaming industry, whether again you're automation, whether you're aerospace, and so the idea of what it is. I guess if I were to take how I see it in different industries and then kind of overlap them and kind of look at the core, the metaverse to me is really, it just boils down to a modern communication, basically. And again, that's the easiest way for me. It's because it's communication that is through mobile device. It is communication through WebXR or through your desktop, but also through a VR headset or through augmented reality glasses. And then we're communicating either an information or a process, or we're communicating with each other. And so and I know it's probably the lamest definition of the metaverse, right? That it's like, oh, it's just communication. But that's what, in my opinion, it boils down, only because each industry from its angles are seeing it as a different type of tool, and how you are in that industry, you're viewing the metaverse as a different type of tool. And so, which explains why we kind of see all those memes about the metaverse, because I think people are trying to like almost distance themselves from this word, the metaverse. And they're we're looking again like Industry 4, Web 3. We're seeing these new XR solutions, and so we're seeing all these new terms, because depending on who you are in your audience, that term fits better. I always kind of say the metaverse is like saying the web. It's like, oh, go on the web. Well, there's a billion websites. What can we do? But that's my thought. It's, again, the lamest answer around communication.
No, I love it. I really love it. I think that this communication component is a core one in the metaverse concept. And when I did my research on the metaverse, because when it's just came up on the market, and everyone were so excited about it. And they were asking me like, Daria, where can I find the virtual land? How can I buy it? What is Metaverse? And I was like, what's happening, people? And I started to do my research on that and just to be educated, so how I defined it for myself is just like another version of internet. It will be in 3D, it will be communication, will be social component in there. And it's just, like we had this question from the audience. I will share it a little bit later. They asked like, how can you earn some money in Metaverse? Like, I don't understand, what is the monetization? What is the business model in Metaverse? And I was thinking like, it's the same like in the internet. It's still internet. It's still the connectivity. It's still the representation of your business. It's still communication. It's still selling and buying, but it's just in another dimension, level up of that. So I think that's amazing. I love how we approach this topic from different angles. And Bobby, I think you're absolutely right in that the industry you are in defines how you see the Metaverse for yourself and for your business or for your industry. That's absolutely true. Love it.
It really does.
Yeah. So
I would say it goes beyond communication though, because you can have a solo metaverse as well, right? Like so I think what you said there, Daria, that it's a lot about 3D computing, and that may be like another like big topic to keep up there. Communication is definitely an item. Like 3-dimensional space is another major item. Maybe sensors throughout the environments is another major one, because these are all just kind of things that are naturally advancing with our computers. It's hard to define whether it's like the advancement of computers or metaverse, right? Like, because metaverse is because of advancement of massive computing power, right? So that's, I think, the hardest thing for me is where to draw the line of like what's metaverse and what's just computing and technology in general advancing to the next levels, Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, I totally get what you're saying, and I don't disagree at all. I mean, I think that is, I think there's, again, it's, as you said, there's so many layers of what this technology is, and what does it mean for industries. I mean, Mana, right? I mean, let's talk about the work that you guys are doing, right? I mean, it's you're creating this banking opportunity, this banking process in a immersive digital world, and we need to think about where are we going as individuals, how we consume information, how we are consumers in general, and we need to think about what are all the lanes of accessing that information. How do I access my bank account? How do I access my savings? And and it's important to know that as consumers of information, all of us, we need to have that lane, like what lane to go through to get that. It's like wearing a jacket. If it's cold out, you put a heavy jacket. If it's raining out, you put a raincoat on. And so that you just need to have the right vehicle to access that data. And I think that's banking. We all do the banking thing. We all have money, so
now we can do that in Metaverse.
So we did exactly what you were saying there. The reason why we decided to focus on the metaverse as part of our actual launch is for access, right? So we're building this bank account and rewards program for gamers who are used to the gaming and metaverse community. They're used to going into a meta quest and accessing digital content that way. So we wanted to give that access to them through whichever device they choose. In that sense, I guess it's simply a move to spatial computing, right? So what they could do on the mobile phone would be nearly identical as what they could do in a VR headset. It's just which one they choose to access, which device they choose to access. That's a really interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's about convenience, right? I mean, if you're in a VR headset, and you want to buy a digital good, and you're like, oh, do I have the funds for that? I mean, you don't want to have that situation. You want to make the process of accessing digital content as streamlined as possible. And even the idea of flipping your headset up or taking it off, depending on which headset you have on,
Exactly.
that's a process. And sometimes as a company, right? Company that they want that quick purchase, that quick sale, and so the quicker you can access those funds, and that split second, that 30 seconds to take off your headset means 30 seconds of like, do I really need this product? Do I really want this?
Exactly, second guessing it.
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And we see the same, we see the same thing here with, again, how we do things with FS Studio with, when we're creating these XR solutions for, industries, it's a process. And so we don't want to create that split second where you have to think about the process. We want it to streamline, and so that's where I think when in order for this idea of corporate metaverse experience, we also need to think about the impact it has on our personal lives, because that translates into how we bring that into work, and vice versa. I do this thing at work, and I come home and I'm like, I show my family, and like maybe we can have a process, and it's a give and take. So, but yeah, I think again, the banking industry. And I've always thought the banking industry was this amazing opportunity to help sort of push and shape what corporate, because again, not just personal banking, but just corporate banking. There's B2B, there's all these opportunities, and that's how we grow.
I think that like the ability to view data in three-dimensional space is so much more advanced than viewing spreadsheets or something on a two-dimensional screen. So I think you're absolutely right. Once we have this banking data accessible in a metaverse app, right, in a three-dimensional app, then we can start to really advance on it. But what we did right now is we evolved the next step to see what you could do in, say, a two-dimensional space or a two-dimensional UI in a 3D space. When we get to the next level of a 3D UI in the 3D space, you're going to be able to do a lot more with your money, a lot more seeing that data, understanding the data, understanding your trends, budgeting, all of this stuff will be a lot easier. I think data management in general is just going to be much, much easier in three-dimensional computing. So when you talk about for corporate, if they were corporate banking where you're managing multiple, like say hundreds of employees, seeing that data and flipping through it very quickly, like Tony Stark or like Tom Cruise from Minority Report, you can flip through 1 million files like if you're just doing this, right? But like it'll take a long time on your phone or on your computer. So these types of data management, I think, is going to be really expensive.
I've seen. Yeah, sorry, I've seen just a few amazing examples of the data visualization in virtual reality, and it was just impressive. And I thought, like, wow, it could bring a revolution to all those corporate meetings with the 50 people sitting at the round table, going through the pages and papers and everything, like they can dive into virtual reality and just explore that data in 3D. And our brain is not thinking in 2D, right? If we imagine something, we'll imagine that in 3D, and that is even more natural for human being to experience something in 3D. And you touched this interesting topic on the accessibility, and in the classic description of Metaverse from the internet creators, they said that the Metaverse should be like platform agnostic and should be accessible from all the possible platforms. Like if you have your avatar, you can use that in all the different applications across different platforms. So it should be fully decentralized. So I see that it's a feature, it's a component, but we're still not at that point, right? So what do you think about that? Like, have businesses already evolved to that point where they can think about this accessibility and platform agnostic conception?
Can I jump in really quickly on that, Stephen?
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
So here's the thing. I think, interestingly enough, in my opinion, when we first started seeing virtual reality as part of an enterprise solution, companies and industries were really focused on the headset, and they really were just like, that's VR, it's a headset experience, and they struggled to sort of get out of that sort of vision of what it is. And of course, we've seen now, right, through web and mobile that VR or XR solutions can be delivered through those platforms. And some of the work that we do, again, with FS Studio, it's like we look at it, it's like, do you want this as a VR headset? Do you want this as an web XR? And again, we do like with for example, with automation and warehouse. You do not want to have, the only option is a VR headset. You want to be able to visualize it in a way through 2D data as well, using 3D assets. And the thought is like, these industries and companies, we have computers, we have phones, they are already fitted and ready to use this type of technology in corporate education, corporate learning, corporate training, processes and procedures, visualize data, as you talked about, Stephen. And it's just a matter of getting them to sort of understand, like, it's really education of like, what is VR? What is AR? How do I implement it into our ecosystem? How does it impact the LMS, right? And how does it impact L&D? Those things. And the pieces are all there. It's just a matter of them understanding a little bit more what that means. And a great example of, we think about how virtual reality is evolving. We can look at the Meta Quest Pro headset that was just announced the other day. If you look at that headset from the side wearing it, right? The old VR headsets where it's completely cut off, you're immersed, but now we don't do that. We don't have the walls built into the sides. Like we want to have that ability to see things. And of course, the Quest Pro has a colorful pass-through because we want to have that mix of VR and AR switching over both. So immersion, the idea of immersion, I think, is sort of taking a sidestep, and that's going to be really important for me, in my opinion, with corporate use of this type of technology, and how because there are definitely environments where it's okay, but most work environments you don't want to be cut off. And again, I think headset makers are starting, especially with Meta, they're realizing that, and we're seeing that. But the tools are there. Again, WebXR, mobile, absolutely great tools, and it's a great delivery mechanism. And I think that's where we're heading, in my opinion. I think that's where you're going to see the traction of this type of technology with every industry.
Yeah, I also think so. And we've been starting with the external cameras at the virtual reality glasses, and then moving step by step with this merge in the physical world and the virtual environments. And I love what we have at the moment, like with the new glasses and with this mix of virtual reality and physical reality. Yeah.
Which are your favorite glasses as of right now?
Oh, that's a complicated question, because
I threw that out there.
it's what for, right? Like for just to have some fun and to play some games, I guess it's Oculus Quest. For the more sophisticated applications, I guess it's Vario. I really love their quality, and the glasses are just, wow, they're amazing. I loved it. And for sure, I love the new concept from Lenovo and Snapdragon. They really transformed that into something feasible, into something accessible that can be used at the workplace by the average managers, and they can integrate it into their workflow. And I really love that concept.
Awesome.
And used it.
I really love the AR headsets. I've only gotten to try them a couple of times. Maybe that's why I still have like new user excitement of them. But I just love the fact that they're like building out technology rather than the games. I love the Quest. I love the games. I'm like super into Beat Saber and playing all the time. But but I love the idea like that we see in glasses like the Nemo Planet glasses that are coming out that are actually showing desktop applications, because I think that that's going to be like the next step where people will start actually realizing the scope of this when it's not just focusing on games. Because I feel like we kind of lose a little bit of like the
perspective
width
in
of this. Yeah, the perspective, because a lot of times we do fall back to the fact that the gaming industry is so far more advanced than any other because they've been building 3D environments for so long. Like they are much more advanced in the gaming industry, but as soon as like the watershed moment of like the iPhone released in Apple 7, then like all of a sudden we had billions of apps. I feel like it's going to be the same thing here, is that like as soon as it opens up, there's just going to be like a huge, massive amount of new experiences that we won't really even be able to think about now until we're deep into those devices.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the future of all of this technology is through experiences. I think hardware. I mean, obviously we need hardware. The hardware is super important, but I think what's going to resonate with adoption, what's going to resonate with growth, it will be boiled down to experiences, and not just gaming experiences, but experiences that could be used for HR, experiences that could be used for education, experiences that could be used to workflow. Again, whether you're in the automotive industry or the aerospace industry, the banking industry, and it'll come down to what do those experiences look like? What is the and I honestly think that much how you, Stephen, you were saying that the video game industry, we had sort of like a heads up because they were used to making these things, and all of a sudden they were like the rock stars of the sort of the evolution of this. And I think if you were to dig down, I think you're going to find UX designers are going to be the new rock stars, because these individuals who are looking at digital content and thinking about how can we make this more streamlined, more accessible, right? How can it relate to individuals and give them an experience that matters, an experience that is personalized? The UX designer, if you're a UX designer on this call, update your resume, and because I think they're going to be the future. I think once we get past this sort of like this current hump, we're going to see the UX design team is going to be like all asking the big bucks.
Oh yeah,
I think it's going to evolve. The role will evolve so massively though that I don't know if current like UX designers like would understand what the role actually is at that point. It's not going to be pixel pushing in PowerPoint, right? It's going to be creating experiences, right? So it's going to be a much more empathetic and emotional.
Yeah.
I mean, it is now, of course, where there's all of this. We're talking about empathy and design thinking and whatnot, but we will actually be building like the experience that a user will see first person rather than just a piece of art on a 2D page, right? So I think the way we consume the work will change the way we actually are creating it as well.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. And there is such a big challenge for UX designers, because again, if we are talking about the accessibility and the working across different platforms, for example, right now we have a project on 4 platforms simultaneously. It's web, it's laptop, it's virtual reality, and I forgot what's the fourth one. Sorry, but again, like it's a challenge, right? To create the user experience that will be accessible on all of those platforms, and you will have something, some unified user experience flow, and then some details and nuances integrated based on each specific platform. Like I think it's Bobby, it's a good call for UX designers that they're gonna change this game in the next 5-10 years. I don't know.
They really are.
Yeah. So what do you think, like, what are the biggest barriers for teams, for companies before this transition to the metaverse for their businesses, for their operations?
That's a really great question. Stephen, you want to go first on that one, or?
I was gonna jump in. Yeah. So you said to operations. You added that at the end, and that kind of changed my answer. But in my opinion, companies need to get their data ready. That's when I like coming from such a large company as American Express, like what I would say is we have the ability, the developmental power to do stuff super fast because we have so many amazing developers. But like the bottleneck will always be, well, we either don't have the data, or it's not valid data or good data or trusted data. And when you're showing people real world data, it is much more important. So as an example, if in your transaction list of your bank, every time you use an Uber, we list the address as the headquarters of Uber, I guess back in San Francisco. That's not a big deal when you're looking at a 2D page, but when you're looking at a 3D map and it's showing that you took a drive in San Francisco, then you've never been to that city, it would be very awkward. So they need to have data that shows like where's the actual transaction happening rather than where the merchant live or something, or where's the merchant exist, something like that. This level of data management is not really focused on in corporate America now, but will be so crucial when the visibility becomes so clear. All of the mistakes and all of that stuff will be so visible. They'll have to really polish the stuff up before they get into the space. So
wow, that's such an interesting point. I haven't heard that before, really. Like I've heard about the culture, about the integration, the ecosystem of the different digital solutions that business already have, but never heard something like what you've shared at the moment. I think that's brilliant.
it's interesting.
Yeah,
Thank you.
really, and it's very interesting because you have to visualize something, you have to transit something to the virtual reality and to the metaverse as it is, and data is you have to get ready with that.
Exactly. I mean, I'm thinking so much in the banking space, but I get this promotion all the time when I go to the gas station for Dunkin' Donuts, which is across the street. And so it's okay. It knows I'm in the general vicinity of Dunkin' Donuts, and it works probably from a marketing standpoint. Like, hey, Steve's near Dunkin', maybe he wants some coffee, but it's not accurate enough for Dunkin' to do anything with it. Like in terms of like telling me about like the purchase and whatnot, right? Like, so it's kind of a very generalized geolocation, but it's not a specific enough one to be used for very much data. So I guess it gets you deep into the use cases at that point of how valid and valuable your data is, whether it will enable these use cases.
Absolutely.
I feel like this is what sets up Google and Apple and these large companies, because they're going to have the ability to structure their data and get it set up and ready for the next like device before they release the next device. So they're already ready, whereas the rest of the companies are scrambling to keep up. So
yeah, I guess they are the giants on the market. It will be strange if they're not. Bobby, what do you think about the barriers? And
sure. So interesting. And it kind of falls back onto data. What Steve said. I think there was a while when I used to say the biggest barrier was ROI. Like a company was always about what's the ROI. They would throw it out there like it was like their badge. Like what's the ROI, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'll stop talking with you. But here's the thing: is over the years and over the past couple of years, we've seen what the ROI is, right? Like we've seen that yes, there's this initial investment in the beginning. But once they get that investment and once they're through, they see that return on investment. They see that okay, now that we have this, we've implemented it, and now we bring it into our ecosystem, a business or an industry, they now have that tool to be more efficient, to do things such as a predictive maintenance. They now have that tool to figure out Daria's strengths are this, and Daria's weaknesses are this, and how can we make Daria a better employee. So there's all these new pieces of data that show good ROI. But if you're asked today, in my opinion, what is a sort of a speed bump, or what's getting companies from jumping into this idea of XR solutions, a lot of it is strategy. that they just don't have the strategy to do it in a way that, again, there's the investment's always kind of a big chunk of it. But when you don't have a strategy, you're now, again, there's disruption on every level. There is workflow stops, alienation begins. You start to get employees who are like, you get really great employees who've been there for years being like, maybe this company isn't for me. And so you need to have a really great strategy. And that to me is sort of what in today's world, in my opinion, that's what the sort of an obstacle in sort of moving forward. It's just because the data is there, KPI is there. We see how it can supercharge those KPIs. We see how it can supercharge your data. You get this amazing ROI. But like any company, right? The least amount of friction is causes the least amount of loss of money, and you don't want to eat into that. And so you need to have that strategy. And again, that comes back to the UX designer, right? And in my opinion, but that also comes to having the ability to build and create experiences. Having a good team of people that you're collaborating with to make sure that experience is exactly meeting the needs, right, of your metaverse needs, right? We go back to the beginning, right? The metaverse is different for everybody, and so they need to understand what the metaverse is for banking, what the metaverse is for warehouse, what is the metaverse for grocery stores, what is the metaverse for a library, what does that mean, and understanding that. And so that to me is what I feel like is an obstacle.
Yeah, I have to say amen on the strategy part. Like I was listening to it and I thought, yes, it is. It is a barrier right now, because what I've seen from the communication with our clients and partners, some of them were just thinking that AR, VR, or this metaverse concept, they can develop that and they can just publish it on the App Store and that's it.
Yeah,
it's done. It
done.
should work. Yeah. We're waiting for a high ROI or some KPIs or something, but then when we start talking about the strategy, about the implementation, about the communication with your end customers, employees, key partners, about the new tool that you have, you developed a new tool for your audience. They can use that and they should get the value, but it should go through the strategy and through the communication. Absolutely. And getting back to the experience, what you've seen from the practice side, I mean, like some of the cool examples of the corporate metaverse or some components of the corporate metaverse from the market, something that you were inspired with.
I'll quickly answer this. On the corporate side, it's corporate marketing side. I was blown away and really impressed at how Coca-Cola, a beverage company, was able to enter the metaverse, or create a digital twin and create hype around something you can't do in virtual reality. You can't drink soda in virtual reality, yet they were super smart about it. Their approach on how to market and how to be a corporate environment and that sells a beverage in the digital world, they were innovative. It was creative thought. Creative thought matters in this moment, in this situation. And they were able to launch a product, again, a physical beverage that you drink through digital marketing. And that to me was really impressive. And then on the other side, I think about Accenture, right? With the work Accenture, building a virtual hub and then having their employees onboarding them. That is amazing. I mean, so FS Studio, we had a virtual hub as well, but the difference is, right, is this, ours is a work at beta testing, but Accenture just said, hey, like, let's make it, let's build it. And they were just like, let's onboard employees through this process. There was no like, maybe we should try this. They were just like, let's do it. I think Steve, I think Stephen, you had mentioned that sometimes we build these worlds and no, it's like they kind of like become this kind of like barren, like they're there and you go in once in a while, there's only a few people. But the idea is you have to create a singular date and an event, and that's what brings them in. It's like anything else. Like, if you go to a club to see a band on a Saturday night at 8 o'clock, well, everyone's there. But if you went on Thursday in the afternoon, well, no one's there because there's no event. And so when you're creating these corporate type of experiences, whether it's a digital twin or a hub, you need to think about what is the event that you're creating and putting into that. That's but that's two things I'm impressed with.
I love it. I also wanted to mention the Accenture, and you already did it. I really love that one. Steven, do you have any?
Like I would say the same. Like, I'm really impressed with all of the marketing that's happening right now. So I think that honestly, right now, AR at least is really impressive for all of the extremely creative marketing things that are happening, because you wouldn't. It's a very delightful and new experience, and it's very impressive when you see it. I personally am more excited about like the VR and AR training that's happening. It's maybe not as public, but I feel like this is where actual applications are being developed in first person view, and I think it's very impressive because it's showing where the next phase of computing actually will be. I think that we'll get to a place where the events and the marketing stuff is not as special, because like seeing a screen these days, we're trying to hide from screens. I think eventually we're going to try to hide from these AR things that will pop up at us, but like we will still be in in three-dimensional computing, which will be valuable and helpful. So I'm really excited about when we see actual applications, like apps. I would love to see what the word processor of a spatial computing environment is going to be like, because I hope we're not typing on fake typewriters on fake paper, but it's possible that we might be doing that.
We'll wait for it.
So yeah, I'm really excited to see like apps. I think like when you talk about corporate metaverse, there's different levels of it, and there's like marketing, which is booming right now because it's got very delightful and exciting things. But then there's events. Like we see all these things happening in Roblox or in other worlds, virtual worlds. So there's like events. A lot of corporations are creating their own event space and then having that event. That's great for community building, but still, like I'm just really excited for when we get it to that next level of going to work, putting on the headset, and being able to work, and actual doing work. Like I want to see what is the task list of three-dimensional computing, because hopefully it's not going to be a two-dimensional list floating next to my head. So this is kind of why I get really excited about where the apps are going to go once we get into that.
Yeah, and how they're gonna evolve. And you also covered this part with the training and education for corporate, for their employees. And there is another angle in here, like how much data you can collect from the user experience and how you can do the annual assessments or exams or high risk profession training. And you can collect enormous amount of data. You can analyze the user behavior. You can understand the behavior patterns and the motivation of your employees in the user experience in some scenario. And that is just impressive. That just booms like in my head every time I think about it. It's just, and specifically with the cognitive load tracking in some of the virtual reality glasses that is already integrated into there. It's just amazing.
Absolutely. It goes back to the data management, right? So even if we just simplify down to an example of the analytics data of building an app, you're going to have, right now you have views, you have clicks, you have swipes. You can see everything that someone does to a page in your app. But like you said, you're going to be able to tell whether somebody looked to the left and then looked to the right and then answered a question, or whether they just answered the question, whether they started sweating when answering the question. So there's going to be a lot more data to manage about your actual app development itself, not only the data of your business. So it's going to be really difficult, and it's going to be a big challenge to manage all this data and organize it in meaningful ways. So
Yeah, I mean, Kellogg, I mean, I think of Kellogg, Kellogg's when they launched the mini Pop-Tarts, they used virtual reality to set up these aisles, and where were they going to place this new product? And, of course, the old data, the old traditional way was, data said if you put it eye level, that's where people find new product. But Pop-Tart actually found that that wasn't the case through virtual reality, and that people, if they looked eye level, like right above it was sort of like a higher tiered brand, and that let them see the higher tiered brand. They're like, oh, let's grab that. And they found that they put the Pop-Tarts, the new lower, they were least likely to look up, and they would, and the data showed was so good that I believe Kellogg's, like, their revenue went up like 15% using this strategy. And but how do you take all that data, right? Again, you're looking left, they're looking how long did you look up? How long was it 10 seconds? Was it 3 seconds? Was it a split second? And what did that translate? How did it translate to sound? So someone had to take that data and be like, well, like, let's crunch it all down. And as in VR technology is going to change, where we are going to see more and more data. Does the customer pick it up with their left hand or their right hand? So how many lefties are shopping with us? How many right-handed people are shopping with us? And
Exactly.
and then we also have to think about, again, with the idea of corporate metaverse, and then again, corporates is a lot of things, from again, like whether you're the manufacturer side or like dealing with consumers. How do your shoppers shop, right? What is are your shop, is it male, female, culturally, where are they coming from? Are your shop, and you have to think about inclusivity there. You think about, like, people who might have disabilities, like, what kind of data does that mean? And so I think we are at the very beginning of what data capture is. And I think there's a whole, like well of, like, more data, through corporates, companies embracing this.
Absolutely. I really love the concept of this heat map in virtual reality, when you can track the emotion of a user's body in the virtual environment, and you can see how they move inside, and what's the average time spent and next to some products or some objects. Absolutely. Well, I think we're out of our time. And we have a bunch of questions that we haven't covered yet. But from our audience, from our guests, I think that we can publish this video later on YouTube, and maybe we can briefly answer those questions in the comments, so our guests, they got the answers that they were interested in, and we can follow up on that. Sure. And Bobby, Steve, I'm so grateful that you've been here with us and discussing this corporate metaverse thing.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So see you soon somewhere in the metaverse or in the real world. Anyway, it will be a pleasure.
I exist to go.
High five.
Bye.
Okay, see you guys. Talk soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.